The fight over mail-in voting is fabricated drama, and it's incredibly insidious. Mail-in voting is 200 years old. It isn't some modern experiment gone off the rails. There is no proof of widespread fraud. Nil, zip, nada. Final answer. We solved the problem of how to let Americans vote when they can't physically get to the polls for the military centuries ago. Pennsylvania created a way for soldiers fighting the War of 1812 to vote back in 1813. During the Civil War, states developed absentee voting systems for soldiers who were hundreds of miles from home. By World War II, all 48 states allowed military absentee voting. And today, federal law specifically protects absentee voting for active duty service members and their families. Because of course it does. Can you imagine how ridiculous it would be if soldiers stationed around the world were disenfranchised? Voting by mail exists because physical access to a polling place and eligibility to vote are two different things. Seems logical to me that before we make mail voting more complicated in the name of protecting elections, there should be proof that elections need to be protected in this way. Because otherwise the burden falls on the people who don't have a workaround. We came up with a solution more than 200 years ago to accommodate Americans who couldn't vote in person. I really don't think we need to unfigure that out.
Anyway, mail-in voting is becoming the preeminent issue in the lead up to the midterm elections in November. Yes, polls show that voters are most concerned with affordability, inflation, the Iran war, Gaza, data centers. We talked about data centers a couple of days ago. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about is the actual modus operandi of voting. When I was in college in Washington, D.C. in the 1980s, I was registered to vote in my hometown of Newcastle, Pennsylvania. So I voted by mail. When I served overseas for the CIA, I was registered to vote in Arlington, Virginia. So again, I voted by mail. 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump voted in the Florida primary by mail. But he doesn't want you to be able to vote by mail. And the Supreme Court ruling on Monday is giving him more leeway to block your ability to vote by mail. In the 2024 election, more than 1/3 of Americans voted by mail. During the COVID pandemic, that number was more than 42%. And in which states is voting by mail most common? Get this, of the 24 states with the highest numbers of ballots cast by mail, and you've probably guessed it, 19 are blue states. And to make matters worse for Americans who want to vote by mail, the U.S. Postal Service announced last week that it would not process many mail-in ballots. Why? Because the president told them not to. So here's the state of play. In March, the president signed an executive order directing the Department of Homeland Security to create something called a state citizenship list based on data from citizenship and naturalization records and other federal databases. The feds then are supposed to send the list to state election officials, and Trump has ordered the Attorney General, Todd Blanche, to prosecute any state election official who provides any federal ballot to any ineligible voter. This executive order also forbids the Postal Service from delivering any ballot to any person not on this gigantic federal list. Well, are you on the federal list? Am I? We have no idea because the list doesn't exist yet. There are several important issues here. Number one is that Trump's executive order is patently illegal. It is obviously and clearly unconstitutional. It's just illegal. Newsflash for the president, there is no such thing as a national election in the United States. Instead, the Constitution is crystal clear. It provides for 51 state elections, the 50 states and the District of Columbia. Every election, whether it is a presidential election or a congressional election or just local offices, every election is run individually by the states, period. And Trump's legislation or executive order, well, besides the executive order, he has this legislation that's pending in Congress to try to change it to make one giant national election. That's bogged down in Congress because Republican senators refuse to allow it to come to the floor for a vote. Democrats, meanwhile, have filed a federal lawsuit, which is, what else are they going to do? I mentioned that the Supreme Court has also thrown a wrench into the Democratic position here. What it did on Monday was to was to lift several hurdles, legal hurdles, for the White House as it continues plans to limit voting by mail. With that said, the Supreme Court decision was temporary and it was limited. A temporary ban on Trump's executive order that was imposed by the lowest level federal court, the federal district court, still stands. So the president signed this executive order. Nobody can do anything about it. I mean, on the president's side, it's frozen because a federal judge said it was. So now you have both sides suing each other. There's also some immediacy to this. Ballots have to be sent out in the next 4 weeks in order to give voters enough time to get them back before Election Day. So stay tuned. This one's going to go down to the wire and it's going to be ugly. One aside, and I found this to be very interesting. I write a lot of op-eds about prison reform, sentencing reform, things like that. And one of my go-to sources is the Brennan Center for Justice, which is a bipartisan think tank founded by the late Supreme Court Justice William Brennan. Well, it published an exhaustive investigative study following the 2016 presidential election, in which it found that voter fraud nationwide accounted for between 3 and 25 ten-thousandths of 1% of all votes cast. Indeed, in the most egregious cases, 7 people were arrested for voter fraud. In all of America, 7 people were arrested for voter fraud, with all 7 having voted multiple times for Donald Trump. One said in her court defense that she did so, quote, to offset the libs, whatever the heck that means. Now, there were also at least 2 cases where foreign nationals voted because they claimed they didn't realize they couldn't vote. But still, we're talking about 3 ten-thousandths of 1% to 25 ten-thousandths of 1%. There is no voter fraud. And folks, while all of this is happening, we find ourselves again in a tariff war with Canada.
Something massive just happened in the fight for election integrity. President Trump's ballot security order is no longer just a proposal. It's now a finalized federal rule. After the Supreme Court cleared the way, the U.S. Postal Service locked in a new system for the 2026 midterms, and a federal judge lifted the final injunction that was blocking it. This is a huge turn of event in our favor. Here's why it's a game changer. The new system creates a chain of custody for every single mail-in ballot. State and local officials must now submit names and addresses of every mail-in ballot recipient to a secure USPS portal. They are forced to use Postal Service approved envelope design and unique machine-readable barcodes. Before a single ballot is accepted, USPS employees will scan those envelopes to ensure the barcode matches the portal data. If the data, the design, or the barcode don't match, the USPS can flat out refuse to accept the ballots. For the first time, we have a federal gatekeeper verifying that a ballot mailing actually belongs to a documented U.S. voter. But make no mistake, while this is locked in now, the Democrats are moving to unlock it, break it into 1,000 pieces, and toss it to the wind. Gavin Newsom and other Democrat leaders have already filed lawsuits. They're claiming this is federal overreach that will burden voters, that Trump is trying to rig the election, which they say is unriggable. In reality, they are terrified of a trackable, transparent election system. This fight is moving from speculation to a high-stakes legal war over a 95-page final ruling. Even Judge Indira Talwani, an Obama appointee, was forced to lift her nationwide block after the Supreme Court intervened, though she already signaled she wants to strike this down as quickly as possible. Now, this is the ultimate test for 2026. For those of us who want every ballot to have an identifiable destination, a documented recipient, and a trackable route. This is a miracle win. We have to know who is getting ballots and are those ballots coming back. We cannot have dead people voting, illegal immigrants, or people that moved. The USPS is going to help all of this be more transparent. And this has to be something that can be replicatable and survive the firestorm that is coming. Listen to what Gavin Newsom said earlier.
Tonight, I'm announcing the immediate declassification and release of critical intelligence revealing shocking vulnerabilities in our election infrastructure. This evidence shows that the election system we have dangerously exposes and really exposes like levels never thought possible to hacking, exploitation, and foreign interference. Just as disturbingly, this vital information has for many years been covered up and hidden from you, the American people, our beautiful, our great American people. But that all changes right now. The documents we will release starting tonight have been gathered by the White House Government Transparency Task Force, a great group of people, along with the staff of the President's Intelligence Advisory Board, supported by our top intelligence agency chiefs, who have all personally reviewed the findings. We are presenting this evening and fully confirmed their authenticity. You can see these documents for yourself at whitehouse.gov. That's whitehouse.gov. Go check it out.
Trump just dropped a political bombshell on mail-in voting, and the United States Postal Service, well, they're now putting in the machinery to carry it out. Now, here's the deal. Under the new USPS rules, states that want to send out mail-in ballots, they have to provide the Postal Service with their list of voters receiving those ballots. Makes sense, right? Now, those ballots, well, they get unique tracking identifiers and barcodes. And under President Trump's executive order, the federal government is building a state-by-state citizenship eligibility list using federal records. Let me translate that. You want the United States government to deliver a federal election ballot. The USPS is a federal agency. Then prove the person getting that ballot is actually eligible to vote and a U.S. citizen. What a revolutionary concept. I never heard of this before. One voter, one legitimate ballot, one secure election, and you got to be a U.S. citizen to vote. And here's the hammer. Under the new system, USPS can refuse to process non-compliant mail ballots. Here's the deal. No list, no compliance. Houston, we have a problem. Naturally, the Democrat blue states, their political machines, all their AGs, they're going nuts. They're going berserk. They're suing. They get injunctions. Then the Supreme Court stepped in and blew away one major legal roadblock, ruling that their earlier challenge was premature. Now, understand this. SCOTUS has not yet ruled on the ultimate constitutionality of Trump's order. And the Democrats are already back in court as we speak, filing more lawsuits. More suits are coming. More judges are going to weigh in. They're going to go to the San Francisco court, the whole bit. And this thing could very well end up right back in the Supreme Court. Here's the question that Democrats are going to have to answer. What exactly are you afraid of? What's the problem here? Why should anybody oppose verifying that the person receiving a ballot in the mail is an eligible American voter and a U.S. citizen? Now, Republicans should make this the hill to fight on. They want clean voter rolls. They want eligible voters, U.S. citizens, trackable ballots, election integrity, because America should never have to wonder whether an election was decided by legitimate voters or by a broken system. Secure the voter lists. Secure the ballots. Secure the election. Do it right and gain our confidence back. And if they do that, the elections are going to be fun again. Now, you can follow me at JF Radio Show. Share this with your friends so everybody knows exactly what is going on. Hey, if you don't share it, the fake news wins. So share this with your friends.
Donald Trump voted in the Florida primary by mail, but he doesn't want you to be able to vote by mail. And the Supreme Court ruling on Monday is giving him more leeway to block your ability to vote by mail. In the 2024 election, more than 1/3 of Americans voted by mail. During the COVID pandemic, that number was more than 42%. And in which states is voting by mail most common? Get this. Of the 24 states with the highest numbers of ballots cast by mail, and you've probably guessed it, 19 are blue states. And to make matters worse for Americans who want to vote by mail, the U.S. Postal Service announced last week that it would not process many mail-in ballots. Why? Because the president told them not to. So here's the state of play. In March, the president signed an executive order directing the Department of Homeland Security to create something called a state citizenship list based on data from citizenship and naturalization records and other federal databases. The feds then are supposed to send the list to state election officials, and Trump has ordered the Attorney General, Todd Blanche, to prosecute any state election official who provides any federal ballot to any ineligible voter. This executive order also forbids the Postal Service from delivering any ballot to any person not on this gigantic federal list. Well, are you on the federal list? Am I? We have no idea, because the list doesn't exist yet.
Brought one chart to this hearing here. It shows 37 court orders blocking Trump in just 2 months here, more than were issued during the entirety of the 20th century.
I have to admit, I'm enjoying listening to my Democrat colleagues suddenly discover the virtues of the rule of law. After 4 years where they brazenly supported the most lawless Department of Justice and the most politically weaponized Department of Justice our nation has ever seen. We just heard the senator from Rhode Island talk about the imperative of protecting judges. And yet not a single Democrat senator cared about the violent protesters that showed up outside Supreme Court justices' homes, including, I might note, female justices like Justice Amy Coney Barrett.
Because they don't like her, bro. It's because they don't like them.
Homes, including, I might note, female justices like Justice Amy Coney Barrett, threatening their families.
Start over.
It's long been said that hypocrisy is the tribute that vice pays to virtue. I have to admit, I'm enjoying listening to my Democrat colleagues suddenly discover the virtues of the rule of law. After 4 years where they brazenly supported the most lawless Department of Justice and the most politically weaponized Department of Justice our nation has ever seen. We just heard the senator from Rhode Island talk about the imperative of protecting judges. And yet not a single Democrat senator cared about the violent protesters that showed up outside Supreme Court justices' homes, including, I might note, female justices like Justice Amy Coney Barrett, threatening their family, and Joe Biden's Attorney General didn't do a damn thing and refused to enforce the law to protect those judges. Why? Because he agreed with the violent protesters and he wanted to intimidate and threaten those judges.
Different ideologies, guys. That's where we are today.
Bray, under our Constitution, who should decide elections, the voters or unelected judges?
The voters are the ones who should vote in the election according to the laws, and the laws sometimes have to be applied by the judges if there are cases.
And under our Constitution, who is charged with making policy decisions? Elected representatives elected by the people or unelected federal judges?
I think the question of policy, Senator, is a little broader than the particular case. So the laws should be enacted by Congress. That's where the fountain of law.
Policy decisions are the elected branches.
Right.
Law is the province of the court. Policy is the province of the elected branches. These are not complicated. Professor Bray, let me ask you this. Do the federal courts have power to issue remedies for people who are not parties to a case?
That's a question I agree is not complicated. They do not have that power.
We've been saying this for over a year. Donald Trump is coming for your right to vote. And the Supreme Court, what more evidence do you need? Just cleared the way months before the election. California will sue. We're not going to let Trump disenfranchise Americans or rig the rules to his advantage. The Voting Rights Act is hanging now by a thread. This is how democracy gets dismantled. One right, one ruling.
This is very serious. Donald Trump is trying to seize power over how states run their elections, and we're just weeks away from this midterm election. And if that were only what he was trying to do and not succeeding, we could say, okay, well, he's not going to get away with that. But the Supreme Court has now given him at least a temporary green light to do this. They're a key portion of Trump's executive order targeting mail-in voting. And what the order wants to do is create a federal list of eligible voters and tell the Postal Service, only send ballots to people on this list. So think about what Donald Trump is trying to do. The federal government wants to put together a list. The Postal Service would be forced to look at that list. And if your name is missing or it's there incorrectly or whatever, an agency controlled by Trump could interfere with the delivery of your ballot right before an election in which Republicans and Trump are terrified that they're going to lose control of Congress. What could possibly go wrong, right? Now, Trump, of course, has spent 6 years now without evidence, claiming that mail-in voting is riddled with fraud. He votes by mail, of course, but it's fine for him to do it. And he has tried to impose a whole bunch of different voting restrictions through Congress. That hasn't really worked. So now he's trying to do it through executive power. And 6 conservative Supreme Court justices just allowed the administration to move forward, at least temporarily. Now, we need to be precise about what the court actually decided. The justices have not ruled that Trump has the constitutional authority to do this. They haven't ruled that he has the statutory authority to do this. What they said is the lower court intervened prematurely. Federal agencies hadn't yet completed their plans for how they would do this, and it was too early for an earlier court to intervene. This is an unsigned ruling from the Supreme Court, and it explicitly says whatever the government ultimately does might be legal. They're not saying it is or it isn't, but they're saying the intervention happened too soon. That technical distinction doesn't reduce the danger of this. The administration can keep building the machinery, and opponents are going to have to scramble to find new challenges. And we are weeks away from this election. Early ballots are going to be going out very soon. Now, Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson made a statement about this, and she said the majority of focusing on the majority's focus on, better said, this technical procedural argument is ignoring that there's a broader effort being made by this administration.
The president wants to control who votes and who votes by mail. He wants to pick and choose who gets to vote. I can't think of anything more unconstitutional or undemocratic than that. So he issued an executive order to the Postal Service to compile lists of voters that he likes and to only mail ballots to people that he likes, which is totally and completely unconstitutional and unlawful. So we just sued again to stop this unconstitutional order, and we expect to win. Now, the Supreme Court just issued an order in a related case where they said that our case originally on this executive order was premature because the Postal Service hadn't yet issued details about how they were going to pull this off, this scheme for Donald Trump. But now the Postal Service has issued rules and regulations, a plan, details about how they're going to do it. And so it's ripe, and we are suing now.
I want to just briefly speak on birthright citizenship. And what I would like to know is, why did the Supreme Court bestow onto the world what was granted to me, my grandkids, my parents before me? Why is the Supreme Court granting birthright citizenship to people that it wasn't entitled for? If you read the 14th Amendment, it specifically will tell you that the children of slaves born in this country from this day forth will be classified as American citizens. And that birthright was given to us as the black population because during slavery, we actually had people here who happened to be black slaves. They happened to be here against their will. And to make amends for that, the United States of America granted us an actual reparation to deem that we are automatically citizens when we're born here in the United States of America. That wasn't intended for any other group of people. And I'm going to say this lastly. There's never been a president of the United States who actually attended a Supreme Court hearing until Trump. And what Supreme Court hearing did this so-called racist president attend? He attended the hearing for birthright citizenship. And guess who wasn't there? NAACP wasn't there. Black Lives Matter wasn't there. The National Black Caucus was not there. There was no one from any entity of African American representation there. No Al Sharpton, no Bing Crump, nothing. Just Trump and crickets listening to the hearing, the case of birthright citizenship. With all these so-called people who care about black people, where are you when there's a real issue going on that needs resolved, that needs defending? You're never there for us. You're there to get us, to help us get other people here and be able to be part of that. You know, I think that's why you started coining the black plight. You changed it to black and brown people, and then you went a step further. You called it people of color. Well, if you look at the spectrum of people of color, that's pretty much everybody. So in other words, everybody gets the same benefit that was handed down to us because of what we went through. Now, you might say, well, they were born here, so what? You know, they gave the Indians casinos. Does that mean they owe me casinos? No, it doesn't. That was how they dealt with the issue that they dealt with the Indian population. That was their way of making up what they did to them. I don't expect for you to open up a casino for me because you did that for them. But I do expect for you, and when I say you, I mean the American government, the president, the Supreme Court. I expect for you to hold up what was bestowed upon us as black people. I ain't asking for no money or nothing like that. But do the right thing. Birthright citizenship was not meant for all these other people coming in this country who have made it out of an industry, a profitable industry. They have taken something from us and made money off of it. And y'all sleep at the wheel. Y'all mad at Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the one brought it up. And you know what? When he brought it up, I thought he was a little delusional about that at first. That's what I thought until I did my research. And when I did my research, I was like, damn, he's actually right about this. So if y'all can find some way to get this message to the Supreme Court, my question basically is, why would you allow someone else to have birthright citizenship who didn't earn it? We earned birthright citizenship. We bled, we died, we were raped, we were castrated, we were separated from our families, we were made to have sex with each other. We deserve birthright citizenship. I don't recall any of these other groups coming into this country and going through that. And to my black folks, now you know why They changed that from black people to black and brown people and people of color. They stole what was bestowed onto us. Give me your thoughts on this.
So guys, in today's video, my mic doesn't have battery, so I really hope that it doesn't bring out the echo around me. So we are going to talk about an update on the Trump's mail-in voting plan that has been altered by the courts in USA. So that's something big that has just happened, and of course the fight over mail-in bag voting is eating up again because there is a federal judge that has just stepped in surprisingly, and of course the parts of Trump's mail voting plan are now temporarily blocked. And this news has just come like some few hours ago after a major Supreme Court decision that actually implemented the executive order from the President Donald Trump. So that particular decision appeared to give Trump's administration room to go forward or to move forward. But you see, that story didn't just end there, not even close, by the way, because we have Judge Indira Talwani that has now issued another temporary court order, and the order actually targets key USPS rules that's linked to Trump's voting plan. So an hearing will be there soon. We're waiting to know what will happen next. We'll be following up on it. And of course, people want to know, why did the judge step in? What did the Supreme Court actually decide? And what could this mean for the 2026 midterm election? So what just happened is that yesterday, the judge in America, Judge Indira Talwani, issued a temporary restraining order. The order was meant to block key USPS rules, and those rules are connected to Trump's mail voting plan. The order lasts for like 14 days, and an hearing is going to be scheduled for September 3rd. So that means that this is not the final ruling, by the way. It's also important to understand that it means that the administration had already been trying to move forward, but now there is a court order that has stepped in. So I know many people are asking, how did we get here, in fact? So in order to understand this, we really need to go back a little bit earlier this year, whereby President Donald Trump issued an executive order, and that order sought major changes to federal election procedures, and mail-in voting was one major part of the plan. So Trump's administration said that the changes were needed, and it also argued that election security must be upheld. But several states and voting rights group disagreed with this particular executive order, so they went to court. They challenged the president's order. They raised constitutional questions. They also warned about voter access, and the legal battle began there, by the way. So the first court battle is by Judge Talwani, that became an important figure in the case. And remember, she previously had blocked part of Trump's order. The decision stopped the administration from moving forward, and then they came back later and appealed. So the court continued through the cases and to the Supreme Court. Then all of a sudden, everything changed. So the Supreme Court twist happened on August 24th, whereby the Supreme Court stepped in on this case, and the court gave the administration a major procedural victory. So it removed an earlier obstacle that had been in place, which had allowed the administration to move forward very fast. But there is an important detail, that the Supreme Court did not settle every legal question. It didn't say that Trump's entire plan was constitutional. That really mattered a lot. So the broader legal battle was still alive, and another challenge was already developing. So of course, the judge had not finished by this time, because on 26th, the judge came in, Talwani, and lifted an earlier block that appeared to clear the way somehow. But then came another development. The Postal Service issued new rules that, those that were tied to Trump's election order, or rather the opponents quickly challenged them. So they went back to court, and of course, the judge responded. So yesterday, there was another temporary block issued by Judge Talwani, and the administration of Donald Trump is facing another legal obstacle. So now everybody's just seated there watching, trying to see what will happen. So what do you think are the new USPS rules? So these are things kind of people need to understand, because the new rules involve mail ballots. They affect how election information is going to be handled. They also involve battle envelopes. The administration also says stronger controls are needed, and election security is the main goal here. So, of course, those who support this particular issue are well. For them, they're okay, but there are those that are disagreeing, saying that the federal government is going too far, and they worry about the confusions that is going to happen. And they're also questioning the timing, because timing is a huge issue here. Midterm elections are just in November, and then you're doing this end of August. I mean, ballot papers has to be printed, election officers have to be trained, systems have to be tested, voters have to be given instructions, and then you're doing all this. Oh my God. So in this case, who do you think would be most affected? Of course, it's the elderly voters, because for them, they may not be able to travel, or I understand by the elderly voters, because these people need a reliable voting system. And then the rural voters, some of these people live very far from the polling stations, and probably there are working parents who really need this kind of mail voting system. So there are several concerns. So what do you think Trump's administration is saying? Anyway, the administration has a very different argument, and to them, they're saying that election security matters. It wants stronger verification procedures, and they just want everything to be transparent, and they're saying that the election rules should be secure also. So people are talking about for voting rights, and we have groups that are fighting back fearlessly and fiercely. So there are a few new rules that could actually create barriers, and these people, those that are fighting for this, they're really worrying about voter confusion, about rejected ballots, about tight deadlines, and they are also questioning the presidential authority, because you see, the president cannot rewrite election alone. They need people, they need the Congress. Public participation is very important, because when it goes through public participation, then everybody gets to understand. So who controls this federal election, by the way? Is it the rules? I mean, is it the president, the Congress, or the states? I don't know. Maybe you could let me know. That question goes beyond the mail ballots, of course. And all of this is about presidential power. It's about state power. It's about Congress. It's about election. I mean, so many. So the Supreme Court recent decision was not a final approval. It did not settle election constitutional issues. It actually dealt with the legal posture only. And that will mean that the fight can still continue. And by the way, it has continued through Judge Talwani. The administration can still face challenges, so the state can still challenge the rules. Now the clock is ticking. We have the 2026 midterm election getting closer, and that makes every court decision more important. Election officials need certainty, voters need clear communications, and states need time to prepare also. This legal battle is still moving up and down. So the current order by Judge Talwani will last only 14 days. The next hearing is September 3rd. That could actually become very important, because the judge could extend the block. And of course, at the end of the day, the Trump's administration might also appeal. And oh my God, these things will just go round and round and round. So what do you think will happen next? Because according to me, there are several possibilities. First, the judge could extend the temporary block that will keep the USPS rules on hold. Secondly, the administration could appeal that could move the case higher. Thirdly, the court could allow the rules to proceed, and that will give the administration another victory. Fourthly, the dispute could eventually reach the Supreme Court again, but again, we cannot predict the outcome of this particular case. So this particular issue matters beyond the president. this case is bigger than the president. It's bigger than that election. It could actually establish it could actually establish an important precedent, and the future presidents could face similar questions. Anyway, there is a political divide between the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republicans emphasize on election security, they want stronger safeguarding. The Democrats are actually fighting for voting access. They fear unnecessary barriers. So both sides are actually trying to protect the democracy in their own way, and they're also disagreeing about how to do it. So that disagreement, of course, it will disappear. But anyway, at the end of the day, people will have to vote. So I don't know what you think about this particular issue. So far, what we know is that a federal judge has temporarily blocked the USPS rules. The rules are connected to Trump's mail voting plan. The order lasts only 14 days, and September 3rd will be the hearing date. Okay, I don't know, guys. What do you think? What we don't know so far, will the temporary block become permanent? Will the administration appeal? Will another court intervene? Will the USPS rules eventually take effect? What do you think? Let me know. Anyway, my good people, thank you so much if you watched up to this point. I truly appreciate your presence. I'll see you in the next video.